Welcome, everyone. Great to have all of you joining us today. We are going to hang out for just a minute to make sure that everyone can join and get settled in. We have some amazing guests today, so be sure to grab a drink and a snack so that you don't miss a thing. I'm coming to you from Bozeman, Montana, where we are going to have our first three-digit temperature day today. Not really looking forward to that. I did actually just move into a house with air conditioning, so I'm really appreciating that today. Linda, how are things in Illinois? What's the weather like for you?
It's actually pretty nice out. It's a little overcast today. We've had a really wet summer, so a lot more rain than usual. So it's a little humid. The mosquitoes are a little bad, but I can't complain because it's not snow and ice. So I'm all good.
Exactly. When that's the other option, we'll take it, right? Great. Let's see. And Ryan, you're also in Bozeman. What's going on in your corner of Bozeman?
Yeah, well, same as well. Pretty hot, pretty warm. I think it's supposed to be warm up throughout the rest of the week too. So we'll see if it hits 100.
Yes, yes, we absolutely will. All right, perfect. Well, we're just past the hour, so I'm officially going to get us started. Hi, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Amy Arno, and I am the Director of Business Development at XYPN. Today, I'm thrilled to host this event. Ask Me Anything. I changed careers to be a financial planner with XYPN members Ryan Sullivan and Linda Grizely. I have just a few housekeeping items to go over. We will start with some pre-submitted questions, build some foundation, but please ask us questions as we go along. If you do have anything that you want to hear more about, please put that in the Q&A module in Zoom. Just a little bit easier for us to monitor than the chat. We will be dropping resources in the chat, so do keep an eye on that for anything that we talk about that you want to find for yourself. We should have plenty of time to get whatever you want to hear about, so ask away. Also, when the webinar is over, you will be able to fill out a survey from Zoom. We would love to hear how we did today and also find out what else you would like to hear about. We're always looking for new topics that are going to be helpful for folks thinking about launching a firm or joining XYPN. So please fill out that survey for us. We do host a free webinar every month. So next month, be sure to join us on August 14th for how to get your first client from social media as a financial advisor. And that will be with N2 Content Marketing. It's going to be a fun one for all you folks looking to learn more about social media. So be sure to join us for that. And you can register in the chat. Finally, we always have great events upcoming, so please check out our events page to see everything that we have coming up for you. All right, enough with those logistics. Let's get to the reason that you all are here. Ryan, why don't you kick us off? Just a quick introduction of yourself and your firm.
Yeah, so my firm is Off the Beaten Path Financial. My background is originally as an engineer, and so I started off my career designing HVAC plumbing systems for buildings across the country, and still actually do that too. But along the way, I started an engineering department, built that up to a good sized team. But kind of all along, just always really enjoyed the financial side of things, enjoyed markets and investing and learning more about that. And a few years ago, I had a random kind of encounter with a guy at the store that also used to be an engineer and had become a financial advisor. And so through that, and kind of we started meeting for lunch and talking, and I kind of learned more about the business, learned more about the potential, and that was one thing that kind of spurred me on to go off and start my own firm.
Great, love that. Thank you. Linda, how about you? Quick introduction of yourself and your firm.
So my firm is Visions Financial Planning. I actually just launched it at the beginning of this year. And I career changed into financial planning about 5 or 6 years ago. And I actually have recreated myself a few times over my life, but I originally had a career in real estate and title insurance and 1031 exchanges before I was a stay-at-home mom. Then I briefly owned a women's fitness center, and then I was executive director at a chamber of commerce. But I got into planning because I was looking for a new career. I was trying to figure out what I was going to do next for the next part of my life. And I wanted to help people. And I was looking for a job in non-for-profits because I figured I could help the most hit people. I could have the biggest impact. And I actually enrolled in a course called the Chartered Advisor in Philanthropy program through the American College of Financial Services. And to get that designation, which serves, financial planners, also accountants and CPAs, as well as fundraisers who do fund development like legacy planning. And once I put that pending credential on my LinkedIn is when I started getting calls like from recruiters from financial services. And the more I talk to people, because I love just to have conversations. So I'm a talker and a listener, and I like to just listen to what people have to say, their stories, et cetera. And it just made sense like that I could really help people through financial planning. So it was this weird turn of events that led me down that path. And then I've worked under a broker dealer. I worked at one of the large brokerages, and now I have my own RIA.
Right. That's like excellent. So let's see, Linda, let's start from the beginning. So did you have a degree in finance, communications, anything like where did we start with your education? And then you said you enrolled in a course. How did you build on that? I guess what were some of the like building blocks that you had in place before you made this decision to be a financial advisor?
So I was working on that Chartered Advisor in Philanthropy program, which actually
Yep.
led into me getting the master's in financial services from the American College, because those classes counted towards that. So I eventually got my master's degree after I decided on that as a career.
Okay.
Um, and then my background in real estate and 1031 exchanges really helped a lot, because there's a lot of that part that goes into financial planning, talking about real estate and titling assets and like, planning and taxes. So I had that good basis just in my knowledge from my prior careers, as well as like my own life experience that kind of
Mhm.
fed into that too.
Okay, great. And so from when you finished your course, when you finished your master's, is that when you started working then for a broker dealer?
No, so I once I started talking to people, I talked to all the bigger ones that were around, that were calling me, recruiting me. But I actually ended up, my first job was with a small local team, and they were under a broker dealer, but they had originally reached out to me to do marketing for them at one point, said, "Hey, will you do some marketing for us?" Um, because they knew I was like looking for a career change, and they just wanted somebody to come in and do some like social media stuff, fix up their website, etc. And I had told them no. I wanted to focus on my path, and didn't want to get distracted by a shiny object.
Mhm.
And just to get some income coming in while I was figuring out what I was doing next. But I came back to them a year and a half later, and I said, "Hey, do you still need somebody to do marketing?" And they said, "Yes, we do." And I said, "Well, I would like to talk to you guys, because I would like to become a financial advisor, and I want to know more about how that would work." So we actually it worked out great for me, because I was able to do marketing for them, get paid from them in a marketing capacity part-time, and then the other part-time start working on becoming a financial advisor, getting my licenses. To work under a broker dealer, you have to have a Series 7. So I had to do all that. And then I was also working on my master's degree during that time. And so then eventually I became a planner full-time. But it was a process, and it worked out well for me to take something that I already had, like my skills I already had, and
Mhm.
offer something to them, so that I wasn't just coming in fresh with no clients and no knowledge, and just figuring it out. Like I had something to give and a way to earn money before I was in there full on as a financial advisor.
Yep, great. And then how long did you say 5 years about working for other people before you, as a financial advisor before you started your firm?
Yeah, so I was about 3 years at that company, and then I left and I went to a large brokerage. I try not to say names. I went to a large brokerage, and I worked there for about a year and a half. But what happened was, my father he has a brain injury, and he started to have dementia, and I needed to be more available for him. He's a veteran, and so he's got VA benefits, and the VA would call, and you have to answer the phone because you can never call somebody back. But in that corporate schedule, it just did not allow me that flexibility to even like schedule phone calls during the day or take him to appointments or anything. So it was really the corporate schedule that prevented me from being able to take care of my own family. And that's why I actually ended up leaving and starting my own RIA.
All right, great, really helpful. Thank you. Okay, Ryan, let's talk about your background here. So where did we start? What foundation did you have? And what else were you doing before you started all this?
Yeah, so I mean, my education, I guess, has been pretty much exclusively self-taught. I went to school for engineering, got an engineering degree, started off in the engineering world, did that. And so, I spent a lot of my free time reading books, listening to podcasts, taking courses, all this stuff. And so I spent years and years just kind of working on stuff for myself originally, of trying to figure it out on my own. And through that process, I started to develop in my mind, kind of an expertise when I talk to my peers or friends or family. And so I also started talking to other financial advisors because I was looking for to hire them for myself, or one, to understand more about the space. And I didn't really like what I was hearing. And so that just kind of spurred me on to do more of my own research and try to figure it out myself. And so really, all of my education and background has been exclusively self-taught. And so it just was a process of digging into things as I came upon problems, and then having those conversations with other people, and then trying to help them out. And so even before I started my firm, I talked a lot with other people about their situation, or I did like some kind of classes or trainings, and just realized that a lot of people's financial knowledge is very rudimentary, or almost non-existent. And so just providing a little bit of guidance could go a long way to helping them get on a good path.
Great, very helpful. And so just remind me, did you work for someone, a broker dealer or another RIA before you launched your own?
Nope. Yeah, I
Got
pretty
it.
much just went all in. I talked to quite a few advisors, and so I guess that's something I've done is I I guess spent a decent bit of time kind of networking, and I don't even know how many advisors I've talked to at this point in time, of just trying to learn from them about how they did it, what they did, what worked, what didn't. And I had a couple relationships locally with advisors, and so I met with them, talked about it. A couple people were with broker dealers and encouraged me not to start my own RIA. And then honestly, actually a big part of why I went down this path was because of XY. And so one of the kind of serendipities that happened was XY is based in Bozeman. I live in Bozeman. And so I actually went into the office and had kind of that initial meeting. Um, and so that was kind of a catalyst too, of realizing that I wasn't going to just be completely on my own and having that support. And so that was really a big component of me feeling comfortable going down this path, because I knew there was resources and support to help me.
Mm-hmm. Great. And how do you feel about that now that you've had your firm? Has it been 2 years that you've had your firm? Like, looking back, was it a big learning curve, especially with some of the admin stuff like opening accounts? I don't know if you do investment management, but like all these pieces that go into both like the firm ownership aspect and the financial planning aspect. Do you wish you had gotten some experience, or were you happy that you did it this way?
I mean, yes and no. I mean, or kind of both sides. I mean, it kind of depends on how you look at it. I think what I decided to do was focus in on clients that were similar to me, because that's what I was more comfortable with, And so I didn't try to focus on retirees because I don't have a lot of experience with that. And so, I've since, worked to gain more experience there, but I wanted to make sure that I was comfortable and knowledgeable about what I was working with people on. And so I tailored my firm and my approach and my services and kind of my ideal client towards those areas that I had experience in.
Right. No, that's helpful. Did have a quick question for you, Ryan. What courses or certifications did you take before you started your firm?
So, I mean, I haven't taken any official certifications outside of, I guess, the Series 65 to be licensed. And I took the SIE too, because in the beginning I wasn't sure if I was going to go the broker dealer route or not.
Nice.
And then beyond that, there's a lot of really great resources out there. I mean, whether it's with XY or a lot of other advisors have started creating material for other advisors. And so a lot of that stuff is, free, whether it's on Twitter or X or LinkedIn or their own websites, blogs, podcasts. I mean, the Kitsis podcast, it's been huge, and there's a lot of channels you can kind of run down as far as following up with that stuff and learning more. And so just the way that I learn is I have a problem in front of me, and I just try to find a solution to that problem, and that leads to other things, and it kind of compounds. And so that's where too, I I don't really retain knowledge as well when I just try to learn a bunch of stuff without having anywhere to apply it. And so the way I've kind of approached it is I want to create the problem first, or like find the problem to solve, and then I will work to develop a solution around that. And so that's where a lot of my research comes in, is it's very specific to exactly the question or the problem I'm trying to solve.
All right, great. Thank you. All right, Linda. So exact opposite of experience where you got lots of experience before you started your firm. So what about you? Would you do that differently? Do you feel like you're glad that you did that? Or looking back now that you have your own firm, do you wish you had just gone straight to that? Tell us what you think about that.
I wish that I would have done more research. I didn't know at the time that there were broker dealers and RIAs and all these different ways that a person could be in the financial services field. So when people say, I need to find a financial advisor, I need to find a financial planner, but they don't know really that there's so many different versions of that. And I wish I would have done my research more. What does it mean to be under a broker dealer? What does it mean to be an RIA? I didn't even know that RIAs existed. Like nobody ever told me that. And now one of the things that I tell people is, when you're looking for a financial advisor or a financial planner, understand the different ways that they get paid. And whether they're commission only, whether they're fee based, whether they're fee only, or even advice only, right? And what does that mean? So I wish that I had done more research in understanding what that meant, and just learned more about the industry in general before I had jumped on board with a broker dealer.
Yeah, absolutely. We get this question a lot from career changes when they're thinking about launching a firm is, do designations matter? Is that something that consumers are looking for? So Linda, someone that got the CFP, how do you feel about that? Why did you choose to get the CFP? Has it made an impact on you, on your business especially? What do you think about that?
I do think that it allows me to be listed in more places, like on the find a CFP on the CFP board site. And I do get referrals from that, as well as, XYPN's list of advisors. Like, I think you have a special thing if you have a CFP, you're on there. So I do think that it creates that, but also it does give you credibility, because people that do their homework look to see, what they should be looking for in a planner. And I think the CFP board also does a really good job of marketing themselves to say that, CFP is the way to be. And mostly though, what I found was, and this doesn't necessarily apply to me now, but when I was looking for a job, when I was leaving the broker dealer, I didn't have my CFP yet, but a lot of the jobs on the job board said CFP required. So the employers wanted the CFP. So anybody that's looking to get into the business, I would say, if you're whether you're looking to start your own or you're looking to work for somebody else, the CFP is a valued credential in the industry, not just by the clients, like within the industry itself. People look at it as a plus.
Yeah, absolutely. And so for you, because we had someone had pre-submitted a question about like, how do I get the CFP designation? So you took the courses, took the exam, and then you got your hours at like the broker dealer.
Yeah. So I had my hours by the time I was finished taking the exam. I had my hours in.
Okay.
So I don't have to wait for it. But
Yep.
I talk to people sometimes who are looking to do it, and they're like, but I don't have the hours yet. I'm like, just do it, because you can do it. You can take the test. You just can't use the marks until you have the hours in. But just saying you've taken the coursework, or even that you've passed the exam, is huge. And then people will hire you if you're looking to get your foot in the door somewhere, just by having that, knowing that you need the hours. There's also other ways that you can get the hours. Like there's the externship is a way that I know that people are getting their hours before they actually have experience. And maybe you could speak to more about that, Amy, if you know about it. But I
Yeah.
can't. Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. Yes. So we are a partner of the externship. It's hosted by Amplified Planning, Hannah Moore. It's a really great program. It's 8 weeks and it's really hands-on. So you get to see actual financial planning being done. They have speakers every week. They have you get access to e-money to do like homework that they help you through to learn the ins and outs. And if you complete the full course, it's 180 hours of experience hours for the CFP. So not quite the 3,000 or 4,000 that you need, but it's a little bit. Certainly a great way to get exposure. So they host that every year, and it starts every year in June. So be sure to check that out. I'm sure we can get a link to the website for everyone there. Let's see, Ryan, we had a question on the other side of this for you. Have you had any blocks or pushback from prospects or clients for not having the CFP? Have you thought about getting the CFP? Tell us your thoughts on the CFP designation.
Yeah, so I've spent a fair bit of time thinking about it, talking to different advisors about it. And, so my thought process was one, so you need the 3 years basically of work experience. And I didn't want to go work for another firm first, for a couple of reasons. One, because I knew it would be a really big setback from an income and just kind of career standpoint for me, just with where I was at in my engineering career. And so even though I knew I wanted to move to this industry, I didn't necessarily want to take that step back. And so that kind of pushed me to the only way I was going to be able to get any experience was to just kind of do it myself. And so that was part of the thought process. And then from there, it was like, okay, well, if I can learn this stuff, it's going to take 3 years for me to get the work experience anyway. So let me just kind of see how things go. And when I get to that point, if it's like, hey, I think this would be really valuable, then, I'll get it. But if my firm is doing really well and I don't think it's necessary, then, maybe I don't need to do it at that point in time. And so the other conversations I've had is, I think a lot of the credentials, a lot of that stuff, I think is oftentimes more for advisors for each other. And so I think for Linda's point about, getting hired at another company or working for them, that gives you some credibility as far as not just being, like I can say I know stuff, but no one really knows that I do. And to get a job, could be difficult when you're going up against other people that have those credentials or put in that work. And so from a client standpoint, I think from hearing from other advisors and in my experience, most clients don't really understand the credentials and don't really know what they mean. And they don't know if that's necessary or not. And I will say that I do think in recent years, there has been more of a push. And I think the CFP has been pushing it more and there is becoming more awareness around that. But most people generally don't hire an advisor based on that or not.
For sure. I think it also depends on your niche too, right? I mean, if you're working with like maybe baby boomers that are retiring doctors or something, like maybe they have a little more awareness of what a designation is versus if it's like Gen Z TikTokers that might not know about. I'm really generalizing here, but it's just going to be very specific to the niche that you're serving of like if that's important to them or not. So I think that's really great for just to have these different viewpoints. Let's see. So we had another question of, I think it's great advice, the looking for fee only or fiduciary. But do you think that the typical new client is aware of the differences between a broker dealer and a fiduciary RIA, or is the awareness slowly growing? Linda, what do you think about that?
I think that the majority of people are not aware. However, there are people out there that are aware. So like when I said I was getting referrals from the CFP website, find a CFP, or even from other places. Those people that are looking for fee only fiduciaries have done their homework and know what they're looking for. And so they're willing to pay for planning. And I think that hopefully as time goes on, more people will be educated on that. I don't know that they will or not. I think that there's still, going to be that majority of people that don't know that there's different types of advisors out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Really quick while I have you, Linda, how many leads do you think you get a year from the CFP board website?
Well, I just launched in January, so it hasn't even been a year yet. But I would say one every couple of months. It's not a lot. Mostly the funny thing about it is most of them look by where you are. But I work fully remote, so it doesn't matter where you are, as long as you're one of the states that has the de minimis, like for licensing, then which means basically I can work in any state except for Louisiana or Texas, because I'm remote. But most of them just look for near you, and that's how they find. They don't necessarily look to see what your niche is or anything, which is different from the leads that come from XYPN. The leads that come from XY are more, niche focused. Like they're looking for somebody who specifically works with widows and widowers or whatever your niche is.
Yep. Great. Thank you. Ryan, what do you think about the fee only fiduciary versus like broker dealer debate? Do folks know what the difference is?
I think most people have no idea. And, I think Linda was kind of saying this before too. I spend a lot of time talking to prospects or clients about that because as I dove into this world to be customer myself, I learned a ton. And oh, there's all these different types of advisors, and they have different models and different services and different compensation. And so I talk to people a lot about that because I think it's really important from a client or consumer standpoint to understand who you're working with and what their incentives are. And so I think that, just general financial education is very limited in this country currently. And so to understand the business model behind how the people that are serving you is a whole nother level. I will say though that I think one of my first prospects actually specifically said they reached out because I was a fee only fiduciary. I don't know that anyone else since then has said that. But there are people that know that. And again, I think that there is kind of a push towards education in this, and that is changing, but it's still a very small majority. And so being on those sites where people are looking for that specifically can be advantageous. And those people are generally a little more informed about what they're looking for. But that's not the majority.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we're getting lots of questions about like how do you get your first client, which I definitely want to get to that. So let's start first with how we launch a firm. So you make a decision, you're going to launch your own RIA. Where did you start then, Ryan? What were some of the first steps? How much money did you save up? Walk us through those like first few months and how long kind of from the first inkling of like, I think I'm going to do this to like, was it done? So give us all those details.
Yeah, again, I guess I'm probably not the norm as far as the way people usually go about this. And so I'm not sure if that's good or bad, but I think that I decided to do it and probably within the month of that or a couple of weeks, or actually honestly probably like a week, I created an LLC and then I started studying for the SIE originally, and then I took that in a couple weeks, and then I started studying for the Series 65 and took that a couple weeks later. And then in the meantime of that, I think I signed up with XYPN and started like the registration process and the onboarding. And so I guess, I'd done a little bit of research prior to that point in time, but I hadn't really decided if I was going to do this or not because I was evaluating a handful of different businesses or different things to do. So I moved pretty quickly from that standpoint. And it took me from that point, that was the end of August. So about 4 months to then until I was fully registered. And then I was, up and running. And so in that time, I was still working and basically just, nights and weekends figuring it out and, trying to go through different resources I had found that kind of helped with the startup process, the expectations around, costs and what to expect. Part of my plan was to continue working to fund the business. And so I had, extra income from the job. And so I wasn't as worried about costs were, but still wanted to keep them to a minimum. And so I know, XY had some good information. I think there was a spreadsheet about kind of that first year to what to expect. And I started just talking to other advisors. Again, I guess XY was big in that as far as connecting me with other advisors that had just started or were going through that process. And so I was able to get information from them, or they were willing to share kind of what their numbers look like and how that was going. And so through that, I just kind of started to put all the pieces together about what those expectations were. And then the other thing I started doing was, just talking to, again, my friends and family and kind of telling them, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is the path I'm going down, and trying to gauge kind of interest, gauge and have, I think, like informational kind of interviews, of understanding what their needs are, understanding the challenges they're having, and used all of that to kind of create process and services and marketing and all of that stuff. And so a lot of it was try to get that information out of other people as far as what they were looking for, or also what was working for other advisors, and then use that to inform how I wanted to approach it. And then really moving just beyond kind of the launch, I reworked everything probably 3 times in the first 3 or 4 months, because I started with something and was like, okay, this actually doesn't make any sense, or this is a way better way to do it. And so I iterated on that significantly in the first few months. And so I think those initial couple clients and those initial couple of working through process was super, super valuable for me to get some experience to better understand, how to kind of approach it and what was going to work for other people.
Right. Yeah, and so in terms of the job, like how long then did you continue working as you were launching? Like what did you do about health insurance, some of that other stuff you were walking away from?
Yeah, I mean, so technically I'm still working full time, and so this is still just sort of on the side. So it's been about a year and a half, and since I was, fully launched. I have since put in kind of my notice to a certain extent, or I'm phasing out of the engineering world. And so, I didn't have to worry about health insurance or even income or any of that stuff. And so one thing, like, I knew this was going to be really slow. Like pretty much an advisor and a lot of the industry data and benchmarking studies all talk about how slow the start of building an advisory business can be. And especially with not having a background and not having done it before, I knew it would be even more challenging for me. And so I wanted to not have the pressure of having to produce an income. And so that was part of the justification for staying with my job, and just putting in the time when I can to build it on the side. And so that's allowed me to get a little more experience, have a little bit stronger foundation. And I'm really looking to have like good kind of client flow or prospect flow, and a decent bit of revenue before I really want to fully step away. Because I know that I'm starting to see the business grow. And that removed a lot of the stress of what could have been if I had just kind of gone for it out of the gate without really knowing what I was getting into.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's really good advice. And so now that you're turning in your notice, so you're gonna do this full time, what are your plans? Like, how do you facilitate then the like 401k and all the other stuff that comes with a normal job or normal, a salary job?
Yeah, I mean, I'm fortunate in that regard. My wife, she works as well, and so we're actually already on her health insurance, and she has those benefits. And so, from a 401k, PTO, or other kind of benefit standpoint, that's kind of a choice you make when you go off on your own. It's up to you, and so you don't necessarily get those things. Health insurance is probably the biggest one, and it's just another expense. I mean, you can get that in the marketplace. And fortunately, I don't have to worry about that at this point in time initially. And so all of that, her support will be able to allow me to grow the business to a point where then she should hopefully be able to stop her job too. So
Great. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, Linda, we're on to you. So where did you start? What were some of the first steps that you took to launching your own firm? Did you build up a runway? Did you go full time right away? Tell us all about your journey.
So because I was dealing with my elderly father, and my mother too, which is separate, like they both had a lot of things going on. I didn't jump right into it full time. And I basically just decided to do it when I decided that I needed to leave the corporate, right? Because I needed the flexibility in my schedule. And it took probably, I think, like 4 months for the state of Illinois to approve my RIA once I filed. So that took quite a while. But during that time, I was able to, I hired somebody to build a website for me, and did some stuff. Um, so there was at least that much time where there was no activity. And I think a lot of people, even if they work for someone else, they start their RIA under the radar, and they get all that paperwork done before they get approved, because there is that lag time, and different states have different approval times, and there's no real way to really know. But I think the people at XY have a good idea, because they do so many, as to how long each different state takes to get through. So most people would probably start that process while they were still working, even if they were planning on going full time in their RIA once they were approved. Then they would just leave where they are. But so I was working, in the background on that, and then mostly taking care of parents and just figuring other things out. I'm lucky enough to have a husband who is still working, and I'm on his insurance, so I didn't have to worry about that. That's a huge pice of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Knowing that you have one income coming in at least. And then I also was able to be a paid caretaker for a small amount for my father. So, at least I had something that was covering maybe our utilities.
Yeah.
There was something in there for what I was doing. Um, so it's really, I think it's unique to each person. You think about, like, in planning, we always talk about like having your emergency fund, right? So if you're starting a business, you should have a starting your business fund, and know whatever that is, how much you have saved, or where that money's coming from. You should always have a plan for that. You wouldn't want to just jump in and not be thinking about how that's going to look, and make sure that you're erring on the side of caution, that you're not thinking like, hey, I'm going to be making this much money, I'm going to have this many clients. It doesn't come super easy. It comes, depending on your niche and your connections, it can come easier for some people than others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we've got our firms approved. So Linda, you're 6 months in now. So tell us, how did you get your first few clients? What did that look like? What have been the most successful marketing channels for you? Kind of walk us through bringing on your first few folks.
Sure. So a couple of them were referrals from other people. So people that I knew referred people to me. And then a couple were from, one of those other places I talked about, like sites that I'm on. I think there was one from Fee Only Network, and then a CFP board and XYPN are mostly where they've come from. So I do a lot of social media content. It's more static content. It's not that much interactive. I'd like to do more videos and things. But I'm still working a lot on with my parents and stuff. So I'm not like full time in this. But I think that the main thing is, when you look at like your marketing and stuff, is just to build your presence, so that if somebody is referred to you or finds you on one of the other sites, if they look at your website, they look at your social media, they see that you're there, they see that you exist, that you have a footprint out there, and keep your branding all together so that they can understand who you are and what you do.
Mm-hmm. And have you focused on a niche with these like different referral sources? I guess, have you been taking everyone? How do you feel about that? Do you feel like you should be honing in on a niche? Is that your plan later? I guess, what do you think about, we beat that drum hard at XYPN. So just what do you
Yeah.
think about a niche?
So my niche is people who have come into money unexpectedly. So that can be inheritors, or it can be widows or widowers. They're coming, not necessarily coming into money, coming into financial responsibility, I should say, unexpectedly. So people whose spouses are ill, if the one who does all the finances is diagnosed with a terminal illness, then they can meet with me, and they can learn about, have their spouse learn about finances with someone that they can trust, things like that. That was my original niche, which I still have that niche, but I've added on another niche,
Okay.
because what happens is sometimes your niche finds you, right? So I found that I have a lot of women who are solopreneurs and entrepreneurs, and I think that they found me because your best clients are the people that are like you, right? They're people who have been who are in the same path that you were in. So I think that's how I'm ending up with that niche also, which is fine. It's a different market, it's a different client to serve, but maybe I will switch completely over to that at some point, since that seems to be the way most of it's going. But in all honesty, the other niche that I'm working on is a longer, there's a longer advertisement for that, like a lag time between people know what you do until they know somebody that's having that experience, right? So it's completely different. But I do think that having that niche really is the key to marketing yourself and to people understanding who to send to you for a referral, right? So if you don't have that, then you're just another advisor or planner out there in the sea of advisors and planners, and people don't really know why they should refer somebody to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I know it is huge for people wondering how to come up with a niche. You have to think about that someone needs to know exactly who you're talking about. So, like, if you say I specialize in women, it's like I know hundreds of women. If you say women in tech, it's like that gets me a little bit closer. If you say women in tech with young children, I have like three people that I want to send you. So, just make sure that someone can recognize exactly who's the right fit for you. So, that's really helpful, Linda. Thank you. Okay, Ryan, tell us about getting your first. Actually, I want to back up really quick back to you, Linda. Can you tell us how many clients you've brought on to date in your first 6 months? Ballpark?
I'd rather not say that.
Okay, totally fine. Sorry, didn't mean to put you on the spot. No worries at all. People are always
That's
curious about
okay.
that,
It's
but
well, because I mean, it's hard. I don't want people to think like, I mean, I've only been working it part time, so
of
it's
course,
not like I'm
yes,
really. I don't want to give a number that would be that would cause someone to think that they could or couldn't do that. So
yes,
I'd rather
of
just
course.
not.
Okay, no problem at all. Ryan, let's talk about your first few clients. So, been in business a year and a half. How did you get those first few clients in your first few months? And what were the most successful marketing channels for you?
Yeah, so my first handful of clients were definitely just friends and family. And so that was the easiest place to start who had relationships with. There was some trust there. They knew what I had done personally and kind of we had, had prior conversations around money or investing or different things. And so that made it easier as far as building some credibility. Beyond that, so one of the challenges I've had with still being working is my niche is architects and engineers, because that's kind of my background and my network and relationships. But because I'm still working in that space, it's been difficult to really market to my niche, even at least locally, right? So what I did was I started focusing on online and basically like social media marketing, primarily on LinkedIn. And so the thought process there was I want to ultimately have, a virtual firm and not be tied to any location and be able to work, remotely and that kind of stuff. And so, okay, let's just start that process as soon as possible. Challenge with that is it's slow and takes a while. And so I've had I guess, relatively limited, new client growth. I think because I wasn't focusing on the local and the relationships that I have. So that's part of the reason of why, okay, I'm working on phasing out of a full-time job so that I can, go after those people and those businesses that I have relationships with, and it won't be a conflict of interest anymore. And so, as far as marketing channels, I think that it's easy to get caught up in the online stuff or CS stuff or this or that in the beginning. And from what I've seen and talking to other advisors, I think that really it's boots on the ground. Like you need to have conversations with people. And even if you want to have a virtual firm, starting locally and just, trying to get in front of people, because that's how you're going to be able to build a connection. That's how you're going to be able to build some trust and credibility. And doing that, virtually or online or via other things is really difficult, especially for someone like me that doesn't have the experience or doesn't necessarily have certifications, that kind of stuff. So that's kind of what I would recommend is really focusing in on who can you actually talk to and how can you talk to them and prioritize your energy there because you're going to have more success quicker by doing that, kind of just blasting things out in the world when no one cares and no one is listening.
Sure. Gotcha. Let's see. So we did have a question for you, Ryan, of how do clients react when they know that you work part-time or have a separate, completely unrelated career? I'm asking because that's the case for me currently.
Yeah, so I mean, this gets to, I've talked to a couple of people about this. I mean, in your ADV, you know that you're required to provide clients. It's fully disclosed in there, right? So it has to be, it says work full time. It's in there. The question becomes, should you also directly tell those people, and how much information do you provide, right? And so in one way or another, clients are aware of that. I don't always start with that. I'm not super forthcoming with like, hey, I'm also doing this other thing, by the way, because I don't necessarily want to have that conversation, but I do make sure that they know that I'm doing that in some way or another. And so the people that I have talked to about that, it's been no problem. And so I just wait until later in the process to where there's already been some trust, they already feel like they're committed, they want to move forward, to then kind of mention that and just kind of casually make sure that, hey, just so you know, I still do some engineering work. Just want to make sure there's no problems there. Are we good? And again, too, with a lot of my clients that they like that I'm an engineer. Um, that provides a level of trust and credibility, and so I think that they're okay with that. They understand that that's where I started. That's part of my story. That's part of why they were interested or attracted to work with me in the first place. And so I think there's less of a concern there. Because also one other thing to note on that too is I'm a professional engineer. I do have a credential potential. And in my niche, everyone knows what that is, and there's credibility with that. And so you have on the financial side, there's okay, this guy can be good, he's at least semi-intelligent or knows things, and that helps overcome maybe some of those initial obstacles.
Got it. Great. Thank you. We lost you for a little second there, Ryan, but I think we got you back now. Um,
Perfect.
okay. So let's talk about, the lessons learned in launching a firm. So Linda, thinking back on your 6 months, were there some things that you're glad that you did, things that you would have done differently? I mean, did you spend too much time on your tech stack, or do you wish you had spent more time on your tech stack? Just talk to us about some of the do's and don'ts that you've learned in your first 6 months.
I think the biggest thing that I learned is I thought I knew what my process was. I mean, I have experience, so I thought I knew what I was going to do. And then the first couple of intro appointments that I had, when I went through like my, explaining to people what I did, how I did it, like I didn't get the first couple of clients that came my way. But I learned from going through that introductory meeting the things that I needed to change or say differently. So that was really that was a learning experience, but it was good. It was a good learning experience because I was like, okay, they're getting stuck here. They're not understanding because I have never sold a fee for planning before. In my previous careers, the planning part was free because I was trying to sell them into other stuff. So now I'm trying to sell them on planning and paying a fee. And so there was a disconnect when they were like, well, what happens when it's over? What happens, is it just ongoing forever? Like, do I have to pay you forever? So I needed to get more clear on what that meant, and what that meant for them, and when it ended or whether it didn't end, what their options were for staying on. And that was a good learning experience for me, so I was glad that I took those client appointments, even though they weren't my niche, because it's not that I was like ready just to work with anybody, but I'm really glad that I took them and went through them because it allowed me to get those out of the way. Um, I think the only other thing is I spent a lot of money on things that maybe I wouldn't have spent them on. Like maybe my website. I have an awesome website, but I don't know that it needs to be that awesome.
Yeah,
um,
totally.
and now it's just that thing, like you learn things after you've done it. But I thought I had done my research and I used someone who did a fantastic job, but I'm just not sure that I needed to put that much money in right away. I could have had something that was less and then did it after I started making money and put more money into it later.
Sure. Yeah. So it feels like the important thing is having a decent website, but it doesn't have to be like the best website in the world as you're getting started.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Thank you. Ryan, what do you think? What are the lessons that you've learned in the past year and a half? And what would you have done differently? What are the things you're glad that you did? Tell us all about it.
Yeah, well, I think I kind of mentioned a little bit earlier too, with just, I took a very kind of virtual and online approach
Mhm.
initially, because of kind of the work situation and because that's what I wanted my firm to be. But I think that ultimately that slowed things down and made it more difficult, or just, a lot of energy going into that that could have been spent otherwise. And so I think, a lesson learned, or what I would do different, would be to really try to focus in more on existing relationships, existing connections, or even just working more locally. Because I think that would allow me to get more face time in front of people and allow me to help build that trust, get my name out there, and ultimately, bring on more clients. So I think that was a big piece. Um, and yeah, I guess that's what the main kind of lesson I would say is just focus less, online, and there, what do people really want? And they want that connection. You want to be able to talk with them, and so the local element I think too helps with that.
Yeah. Ryan, do you think that that's specific to a community like Bozeman that's like kind of relatively small compared to most places in the world? Or would you give that advice to anyone?
Yeah, I guess that's a good question. I don't know. I mean, this is a smaller town. If anything, I would say it maybe even applies more so in bigger cities because there's so many more people there, right? And so part of my challenge is there's not that many people here, and the people that I wanted to talk to, I couldn't talk to. So therefore, it's like I'm going to go somewhere else. But I think that I should have found another way to solve that problem. And so I think in bigger cities, there's just so many people there. And again, I guess another kind of lesson for me, and maybe just because of how I went about this, is like getting more reps, right? Like getting more experience. And every time that I work through something with a client, like I learn a ton, and I then take that and I use that to do other things with it, whether to market slightly differently or to help create content, or I learn about some new financial planning topic or things. And so for me, it's really like these building blocks. And when you have, many clients coming in, there's not that many building blocks coming. And so I think figuring out other ways to get reps, to build that experience, to be able to speak more coherently about what the value I will provide and what people expect to receive in return for working with me.
Got it. Great. We did have a question about that, Ryan, of like, what has been your biggest hurdle not having prior planning experience? So is it that of just like communicating the value, like not having the previous reps, maybe?
I think so. I mean, I've heard other advisors talk about this too, that it's we kind of have a chicken and an egg problem where, you know, you can't really tell somebody what you're going to do for them until you know more about them. And so you have to like kind of get the information out of them to understand their situation to really say, oh, this is how I can help you. But you can't do that until they want to share it, and they don't want to share it until they become a client. And so like it's kind of this hard dynamic. And if you have a bunch of experience, you can kind of make parallels between the person and other people, and you can probably get to that end state easier. And so that's where I've really struggled. Like, I know that I can help you. I know very confident that I can help you, but I have a hard time showing you what that will look like or explain it because I haven't done it a whole lot. So I think that's
Mhm.
been a big roadblock. And so it's how can I communicate this future state to that person effectively is a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're getting close to the end, so I want to ask one final question to both of you. Linda, are you glad that you made this career change?
Yes, I am. I love the field of financial planning. It is a way that I can help people, and you really build relationships with your clients. You really get to know them. It's a very personal I think this is, Ryan, also why it's good to meet people in person, because it is such a personal experience diving deep into their finances, because they're like all uncovered, but you learn so much about them and about their families and everything. And I love that part of it. So yes, I'm absolutely glad that I got into financial planning, and it is my career that I'm going to stick with for however long. But yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Ryan, how about you? Are you glad you're in the process of making this full-time career change?
Definitely. That's another thing too, with just the way I went about it is, I guess I gave myself time to really make sure this was the right path, and by not kind of just completely jumping in right away and then going, oh no, what have I done? And so, I mean, pretty much every step of the way, it's kind of just reconfirmed that this is the right path, this is the right direction. I really enjoy this. And, every time I get to kind of solve a new financial problem, it's like it's really exciting for me. And so I really enjoy that. I like solving problems. I like dealing with numbers and money and all of that, which is why I started doing this. And so every kind of opportunity is just reconfirming that for me, which makes me feel good about the whole decision and the direction I'm going. So
Yeah, absolutely. I love that so much. Well, gosh, this has been such a great session. I'm so glad that both of you could join me today. For anyone out there that wants to learn more about launching a firm and how XYPN can help, we're going to put a link in the chat for you to schedule a call with us. We also would love to see you at XYPN Live. That is our annual conference that we host every year. We're going to be in Minneapolis, Minnesota this year, mid-October, so you won't want to miss out. There's going to be lots of content to help you get your arms around launching a firm, and it's going to be really fun. So I hope you all will join us. So again, Ryan and Linda, thank you both so much for coming today.
Thanks for having us on.
thanks, Amy.
All right, everyone, have a great rest of your Wednesday. Thank you.